mathematicians. Today we're going to be learning about fractions, more specifically about fractions on a number line. To get us started, here we have a number line. And notice that in order to get from 0 to 1, it takes 2 spaces. So that means in order to make a whole number, you need 2 spaces. That means that we're going to be counting up by halves in this case. 1 out of 2, and then 2 out of 2, because it takes 2 spaces in order to make one whole. So here we have a number line, and in this number line, it takes us 1, 2, 3 spaces to make one whole. So in this case, because it takes us 3 spaces, we're going to be counting up by thirds, because it takes 3 out of 3 spaces to make one whole. So we have 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, and 3 out of 3, which is just equivalent to 1, so we don't have to include 3 out of 3. For our next one, in between 0 and 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. So it takes 4 out of 4 to make one whole. So that means we're going to be counting up by fourths. So 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and 4 out of 4 in order to make a whole, but 4 out of 4 is equivalent to 1, so we don't need to have that on our number line. For this number line, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So because we have 5 spaces from 0 to 1, we're going to be counting up by fifths because it takes 5 out of 5 spaces in order to make one whole. So we have 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5, which is equivalent to 1, so we don't need to include that. And so that's our number line counting by fifths. In our next number line, in between 0 and 1, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces. So because we have 6 spaces, we're going to be counting by sixths. So we have 1 out of 6, 2 out of 6, 3 out of 6, 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6, and 6 out of 6 because we need 6 spaces out of 6 to complete one whole. Now, 6 out of 6 is equivalent to 1, so we don't need to have that there. In our next number line, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces in order to get to one whole. So we're going to be counting up by sevenths. So we have 1 out of 7, 2 out of 7, 3 out of 7, 4 out of 7, 5 out of 7, 6 out of 7, and 7 out of 7 in order to make one whole. But we don't need that there because that's equivalent to 1. So for our next number line, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spaces in between 0 and 1. So it takes us 8 out of 8 spaces to make one whole. So we're going to count up by eighths. So we have 1 out of 8, 2 out of 8, 3 out of 8, 4 out of 8, 5 out of 8, 6 out of 8, 7 out of 8, and 8 out of 8 in order to make one whole. But that's equivalent, so we don't need to have that there. For our next number line, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spaces in between 0 and 1. So that means that it takes 9 out of 9 spaces in order to make 1. So we're counting up by ninths. We have 1 out of 9, 2 out of 9, 3 out of 9, 4 out of 9, 5 out of 9, 6 out of 9, 7 out of 9, 8 out of 9, and 9 out of 9, which makes one whole. And we don't need to have that because that's equivalent to 1. Now here in our number line, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it takes us 10 spaces in order to get from 0 to 1. So it would take us 10 out of 10 spaces to make one whole. So we're going to be counting up by tenths. 1 out of 10, 2 out of 10, 3 out of 10, 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, and then 10 out of 10, which is equivalent to one whole. So we don't need to have that there. Looking at our next number line, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 spaces to get from 0 to 1. So it would take us 11 out of 11 spaces in order to make a whole. So here we're counting up by 11ths. So 1 out of 11, 2 out of 11, 3 out of 11, 4 out of 11, 5 out of 11, 6 out of 11, 7 out of 11, 8 out of 11, 9 out of 11, 10 out of 11, and 11 out of 11, which is equivalent to one whole, so we don't need to have that there. So in our final number line, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 spaces in between 0 and 1. So that means it takes 12 out of 12 spaces in order to make one whole. So we're counting up by 12s here. So we have 1 over 12, 2 over 12, 3 over 12, 4 over 12, 5 over 12, 6 over 12, 7 over 12, 8 over 12, 9 over 12, 10 over 12, 11 over 12, and 12 over 12, which makes one whole. So we don't need to have that there. And that's it for fractions on a number line.